Hey, welcome to our podcast. I'm so glad that you have clicked on this video. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd go ahead and ask if you'd like and subscribe to our channel. We have podcasts coming out every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. I'm super excited for today. We're changing it up a little bit, and we will be interviewing my dad, the pastor, our dad, the pastor here, Brian Treadaway. This is me, Treadaway, and Hunter Treadaway here on the podcast.
How's it going?
The fifth born. He's the third born. He's the oldest son. I'm the second son here. So, yeah, it's going to be a good podcast today. I'm super excited for it. So we see the ministry of Vertical now, and a lot of people just, you know, maybe this is their first time seeing you, and they're like, oh, cool, this guy has had a ministry, and it's probably been like this forever.
He's been with Vertical all the time.
Exactly, yeah. Some people don't know Vertical Church.
1800s.
Yeah. Some people don't know that Vertical Church is just 8 years old, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm excited today to dive into the history of what has made you who you are, and we're going to hear the passion that you have for ministry, all right? So we're going to start away on the throwback of 60 years ago, 1963. You...
Cute baby crying sounds.
Exactly, yes. You're born, and you are living in Oak Cliff, right? Oak Cliff, which is was the happening spot back in 1963.
Back in the day.
And you're born to Lucille and Ben Treadaway.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your life was like with your parents? You know, what was that time frame like as an only child as well?
Yeah, exactly. So first I'll say I'm super honored that we three get to be together to do this.
Same.
It's more than a dream come true, because I don't know that I would have ever even dreamed it. So it's beyond that. So I'm glad for this.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Oak Cliff. My dad was a truck driver at the time, and my mom was not working early on and lived in Oak Cliff, but then they moved around a little bit. Spent some time in Missouri. My dad's driving truck, moving around. He has some accidents, and it brings him to the place where he says, I'm done with truck driving. So we moved back to Oak Cliff, live in a couple different places, land on a very small street called Eli Avenue, and live there. And I'm an only child. My parents had both been married before, and so when they marry, I come late in life to them, and I'm only child.
Because they are how old at this time? Like,
my mom is in mid-40s, and my dad he's in his 50s when I am born.
Wow. Because you have grandma, as we call her, was born in 1929.
Yes.
And grandpa was born in 1918.
18, yes.
1918, 1929. You're born in 1963.
Yes.
And so you don't have parents who were just born in the 40s, like I'm sure most of your friends did. But your dad is like other people's grandpa.
Exactly.
And so
he was born in the Great Depression.
Before.
Like living throughout the Great Depression.
Yeah, they lived through it. I heard their stories, you know, sharecroppers and moving around and what that was like. And, you know, when the invention of the car comes along. What? That's my parents.
Your parents.
Yes.
Yeah, not like your great
No, it's not way back. It's not just history books. It's my parents.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so you grew up as an only child. To them, your only closest siblings are half siblings who are like 20, 30 years older than you.
Yeah, that could have actually been my parents.
Yeah.
And they didn't live near all the time, so I didn't see them all the time. I got to spend some time with them. I called them my brother and sister. They were half brother sister on my mom's side.
But there was a super healthy relationship there to just call them
it was great. I mean, most people, you would probably think it would be like your aunt and uncle, you know, as far as age breakdown. So anyway.
And so you also grew up without faith in the home, correct?
Correct. So both of them are hardworking, moral, good people, obviously. But we didn't go to church. I remember a few times my mom went to church in the like Easter and Christmas kind of thing, and I went a little bit with her. But that was never a part of home life. There was no discussions about God. There was no Bible reading.
So did you grow up as Sundays being the relaxed day or Sundays being a working day?
It was just a relaxed day. It was just, you know, day at home, and I didn't think of it as anything special.
Yeah.
So
your early childhood, you're going to the Oak Cliff schools. You're doing the things. What are some of your early childhood experiences like?
Yeah, so they're both working. So I'm daycare drop off in the morning. They take me to school. Daycare pick me up in the afternoon. Take me back to to the daycare, and my parents pick me up later in the afternoon when they're home from work. So and then home in the evenings. My mom and dad later get involved in square dancing, so I join them in that because what else am I going to do? So
you're how old whenever you're like square dancing is our family now?
I'm middle school and freshman.
Wow.
You know,
Nice.
6, 7, 8, 9, right in there.
Now, were they already starting to square dance, and you were like, I can be a part of that, or did you lead that?
They
charge?
started, and I'm going with them because I've got nowhere else to go, and so they encouraged me, and I just joined in with them. So
That's cool.
So you're just doing life there in Oak Cliff, but then a huge change to your life happens in 1978 whenever your parents say, "Hey, Oak Cliff was fun, but we're actually moving."
Yeah, so here's me, only child. I like stay in my routine kind of thing, and I'm comfortable. I'm moving up into my sophomore year in high school. A little bit insecure. I'm gaining my footing. I'm in band.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but you're at like a big time school as well.
Yeah, it's at Sunset High School. They're kind of in their premier years at this period. The band is like a big deal. They're traveling. We go to San Antonio. We go to the for a big parade.
And this is marching band, just to clarify.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah. They're a big show band, and so we're doing all these fancy routines, and then we're traveling over to the Kentucky Derby and marching in a parade there.
Oh.
That's awesome.
And so I've got my sights set on. I think I'm going to be a drum major here one day. And
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm involved in a drafting class. I'm thinking architecture. I think architecture would be a cool thing to do.
That's
so I'm
cool.
kind of mapping things out here as the years.
At a very well structured school as well. Like they're like, hey, we're gonna push you real hard in the school.
Yeah.
I'm developing friends, and all of that's happening. And then they say,
we're square dancing away.
say we're going to move to the small town of Red Oak.
Yeah.
And that is heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
And
Which today it's like, okay, wow, you moved 20 minutes away. Just stay in contact with everyone through every single social media possible. But back then, it was like pick up, move. Like I might never ever see these people again.
Make sure you hear from our messenger pigeon.
That's about it.
And so it's heartbreaking, but I'm trying to make the move, and we do. Obviously, we make the move, and then I become angry, and I'm super angry at them. So much so that it's at the end of my sophomore year that we move, and which is going to leave me at home all day long out in Red Oak, knowing no one, not being able to go anywhere. Yeah. And
like you're talking basically dirt roads around here.
Exactly. Very, very different place than it is now. And they're both working in Dallas.
That's crazy.
And I'm angry. And so they say, well, you can go live with your sister in Missouri for the summer. And so I do. And process through that.
Does she pick you up, or did they drive you to Missouri?
They put me on a Continental Trailways bus.
And you're 15?
I'm 15. Like
15, booking it out there.
Here's $250.
Get on the bus and see you.
And that's like a 12-hour bus ride?
It's an 8-hour drive if you drive it, but buses there it's much longer because they're stopping in all small towns and dropping people off, picking people up. And
do you even remember if you had like a Walkman cassette to listen to music?
No, there's no such thing yet at that point.
You're just staring at the
window.
like
1978. You're just.
I'm not reading books. I'm not doing anything at that point.
Just counting the amount of corn stalks you pass.
Exactly.
That's like literally just professional timeout.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, get there, and my sister and her husband, offer me this summer of life, and he takes me to paint houses with him, and it's a summer of learning a lot. I'm 15, and
that's tough.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I guess, whenever you come back again, it's not like, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm so glad to see you all over again.
No, because the summer is built on this idea of we'll think about in the summer what you're going to do. Because I kept pitching this idea of I want to keep going back to my school in Oak Cliff.
Wow.
I want to go to Sunset.
Wow.
You'll take me to school. And they said, we'll think about that. So all summer long, I'm anticipating an answer.
And you're like, they're going to
do it. Yeah.
Every day at Sunset.
Yeah. And then I'm saying all kind of crazy things like, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to move to Oak Cliff myself and live in an apartment. Like, that's stupid. I didn't have a job.
You're trying to make enough money painting houses.
Exactly. I didn't know how, but I was, anyway.
Yeah, convinced. At 15, like every person does. Yeah.
So you get into that summer, and the answer is no, you're going to go to Red Oak.
Yeah. Did they tell you before you come back?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. At least.
And so that.
I don't know if that is a good thing or not.
I mean, it's what it is. And I'm still angry. I get involved with the band, which the band is nothing like what I'm a part of.
Because you go from, is it 4A Sunset at the time to 2A, 1A Red Oak? 1A Red Oak.
Wow.
So again, like.
Who didn't even have a drafting class at all. The only elective they had was ag.
Oh,
or band.
that's tough.
We just insulted a percentage
Sorry,
of our
Ag.
viewers.
Sorry, all
Sorry,
you ag
Nick Pearl.
fellows. That was not my thing, but
Yeah.
it was ag or band, so I chose band, obviously, and
Yeah.
some good things came of that. Met
Yeah.
some great
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
it filled a little bit of a need within.
But again, while you're there, it's not like, all right, let's go perform and let's go do these things. It's not show band. Or
no, I come from a place, in Oak Cliff. This guy, the director we had, it's like, we're going to do a different show every week, and this is the era of Star Wars, and so we're doing Star Wars themed shows, and we've got these girls that are twirlers, and they're twirling batons with fire on them while jumping ropes with fire. And we're, this was
the 70s.
It's the 70s. We're doing crazy things on the field.
Yeah.
Every week it's a new show. I moved to Red Oak, and the guy says, we're going to learn one show, and here it is. You march onto the field in a line, you play the song for the drill team, and you march off the field in a line.
Tough. I mean, just heartbreak.
Well,
That's all that is.
It was.
Because to every creative person, if you're just like, you will come here, you will use this one thing, and you will draw this, and that is it. And it's just like,
yeah. So it's only fueling more anger and resentment toward my parents at the time. And
not the best of times.
No, it's
and
not.
so that's 1978. You're going into your junior year.
Yep.
So you have junior, senior year there.
Yep.
You graduate 1981.
Yep.
And then around that same time, you are invited to ORBC.
Yeah, so when we move out here, my mom becomes interested in church more often. So she starts attending Ovilla Road Baptist Church.
Whenever you're in Ovilla, there's about 12 churches to pick from in a 1 mile radius. So.
Yeah, so she does. My dad does not. And she goes.
Do you remember anything specific that started that mindset for her that said, I'm in this chapter of life?
I don't, other than, I guess it was just a new thing. It's a new time to start over. My dad is, he's like, I'm going to plant a garden, a big garden.
I was going to say, because one other thing, I remember you saying how homesteading is a very popular thing now. Whenever your parents moved out here to Red Oak, it was like, it's homesteading time. It's chickens and it's
my
garden.
Dad buys. He buys chickens. We build a chicken coop. He's got a 1/4-acre garden. He's planting corn and cantaloupe.
And again, this isn't where he how about that new battery Ryobi thing that tills the land? He's
I watched a lot of YouTube videos that showed me how to.
Nope.
The dude said, I lived the Great Depression.
Yes.
And here we
I'm
go.
going to do it. And he did. And he worked that ground and planted those gardens out there, and we got a lot from it. He later gets bees and makes his own honey and all that kind of stuff.
He was the ultimate homestead.
He was doing it.
And so anyways, your mom going to church.
She goes to Ovilla Road and Ovilla Road Baptist Church. I visit with her a little bit, but I'm still doing my thing. And then there was a girl I liked at school, and she also went to Ovilla Road Baptist Church. So I go visit with her. She later breaks up with me.
Do you sit with your mom, or is it like you and her?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. And so she breaks up with me, and it's got this long summer of, I'm struggling. Now, I'm angry at my parents, and now the girl that I had, I'm heartbroken. All this is going on.
It's every terrible rite of passage that guys go through. It's just...
You're driving...
So...
what is it, Hampton? And all that stuff?
Cruising Hampton.
Cruising Hampton.
DeSoto, so it's in that summer that I'm attending the church after I graduate, and one of the guest cards, I pick it up, fill it out, and I check, I'd like to talk to someone about my faith.
That's cool.
Or about it receiving Christ. And it takes some time, weeks, before someone calls, and actually he comes over. He comes over, my parents are gone, and he comes in and sits down, and we talk, and he shares the gospel with me. And in my living room, I prayed to receive Christ.
Wow.
Which was great. This was the summer of 81, and I didn't know a whole lot about what to do next. I remember it took a little while again to be baptized. I was finally baptized.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember getting a lot in terms of here's what you do now.
Yeah.
And so kind of fumbling around in all of this.
That wasn't the thing of the 80s, though. The 80s was like, become a Christian.
Yeah.
And it was like, you've become a Christian.
Yeah. So I'm fumbling around. I'm broken relationship with my parents, and I don't have broken dating relationships. And I'm like, what is going on?
And you're graduated
here?
now.
Graduated. I'm going on. I want to be an architect is what I think at this point. So
no drafting classes. So you got to take college drafting classes.
So I go on to Cedar Valley, still no drafting classes.
Yeah.
Take some basics there. And I finally go to UTA. I'm like, okay, now we're getting back into this whole thing of drafting and architecture and all of that.
And this
which
is like
great.
1982.
Yeah, we're 82, 83. And taking those courses there at that time. Well, in 83, something else changes at the church. They get a brand new pastor.
Yeah.
And so Nick Harris comes as the pastor, and he has a family, and he has a son and 2 daughters. And so I'm still attending, and so I hear him, and man, he preaches in a different way than what I'd heard before.
He still preaches in a different way than we've before.
He's preaching about how the scriptures apply to life and how we kind of live this stuff out. And that's super intriguing to me because it was kind of the deficit that I had. I didn't know how to do all this. And he comes along and it's really filling that need. So now I'm interested. You know, I want to go to church. I'm not going just because of a girl or because of my mom. I'm going because I want to go.
Yeah. And he's saying you don't have to live the life that you're living in brokenheartedness, but you can actually live life with full life.
Yeah, and he's breaking down the scriptures and teaching them, and super knowledgeable of scriptures, but he's helping me understand what the Bible is all about, how to apply it to my life. And he's talking a lot about family. He's talking a lot about husband and wife relationship, a lot about parenting and raising up children and future generations.
Like the whole relationships.
That's all his
it.
niche.
Yeah.
So that is all wonderful.
Yeah. So this is 1983-ish, or that he comes. And at that time, where are you working at? Because 1983, you're not in high school, and you're not an architect.
Yeah.
But what are you doing?
Yeah. So I had worked at a little convenience store gas station in Red Oak called Treadaway, and had done that for several years. Got to know the owner.
And that's kind of like where Red Oak High School is now, correct? Like
it's across the street from there. Yeah, yeah. The building is still there. It's I don't know what it is now these days, but it was like the spot. There wasn't anything else in Red Oak.
It was the hangout spot.
There was that. There was a very small grocery store and a post office. Basically, that was about it.
Wow.
So you went to the Treadaway. Everybody went to the Treadaway. That's where you bought your gas. That's where you bought your soft drinks. That's where you hung out.
And truly, it said Treadaway on it.
That was the name of the store, Treadaway.
Okay. Just had to clarify.
Break it down for everyone because it sounds like Treadaway, and it's like, what is that?
What
so
vowels and consonants?
You go in and you buy your food and tote it away.
Yeah,
tote away.
They were like, wait, Treadaway? Once we're at Treadaway?
Yeah,
like, so I can get with this.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you worked there for quite a time to where you're even elevated up into like, hey,
so I first start there. A friend, the guy that was the drum major before me at Red Oak, gets me the job basically because he's working there. And it turned out that there's like 4 generations of drum majors that worked there during that time.
So cool.
It was so wild. Anyway, I worked there, and you go from racking bottles in the day and mopping the floor and all that kind of stuff to get to the point where I'm working the register, to the point where he's allowing me to open the store and close the store. I've got a key and all this stuff.
And eventually you move from the Red Oak location, and he opens up a location here
so he's
Ovilla.
had one here in Ovilla during that time. But Ovilla was not the place it is today. Ovilla was like, don't go to Ovilla. There's a whole lot of drugs and people there you can't trust.
Wow.
You don't go to the store there. If you do, get in and get out because it's not a safe place.
That's crazy.
So we had the Red Oak store, and all the guys, a lot of high school guys worked there. And then there was the Ovilla store, and we knew guys that worked there, and we were all like kind of frightened by these guys. Like, this is just not a good place. It's unsafe, So NL, the guy that owned the store, he sells the Red Oak store, and he says, I'm going all in on the Ovilla store.
Wow.
That's wild.
And so he brings some of us from the Red Oak store, not all of them, just some of us over there, and we start working. And so, here we come, the new guys into the store of guys that have been there. And we're all the guys that me and my friends, we've been going to church by this time, and we're trying to live a Christian life. So we're honest, we're hardworking.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to sound bad about these people, but they don't move in those circles necessarily at the Ovilla store.
Yeah.
And so they start quitting, and then they start getting fired because, come to find out, the owner is losing lots of money because of these guys.
Wow.
And so we come in, and all of a sudden the store changes, the culture changes in the store. People start coming in. They're not afraid to come to the store anymore.
Yeah.
And all of that changes.
And where is that store?
That store now sits next door to where Vertical Church is.
Yeah.
It is, if you're in Ovilla right now, it's the tutoring center that's next door that sits vacant. But
I just think what's so wild is like, we reserve that spot for the early crew for like worship, band, and tech. And like that's where you park.
I park in front of that.
40 years ago.
Do you know if you park in like the exact same spot?
I don't park in the same spot, but I could. I could.
It's just about, I think, where Roseanne parks.
Yeah. I could park in the same spot.
Yeah.
It is
40
weird.
years later.
Yes.
And not just that, but you've said you and your friends used to play football in what now is the parking lot here at Vertical.
Yeah.
So and y'all would all be playing. That's obviously the worship center here.
Yeah.
But y'all were all just having a good old time.
Ovilla's, it's small town, ultra small town back in the day. And so we'd get off from work and say, oh, let's go next door and play football in the field. So we'd play football out here in what is the parking lot of a Vertical now. So crazy stuff.
Anyways, so that's what the young early life looks like there.
Yeah.
And you go from, again, pursuing architecture degree at UTA and all this stuff.
Yep.
And then also in 1983, whenever Nick Harris, or what, spoiler alert, our grandpa, our other grandpa, Papa, as we call him, whenever he comes, there's a position that's open at the church. And what position is that?
Yeah, so I'm working at the Treadaway, and I get to know some of the people. I'm going to the church, and then the church, one of the deacons came to my house one night and said, hey, we need a janitor at Ovilla Baptist Church.
Sounds like the most underground. Hey, Brian.
And he said, would you be interested in that position? Of course, I've been at the Treadaway for 5 years, and I'm working my way up there, and it's good. But the thing is, I'm having to work early Saturdays and Sundays. I'm working. I'm the guy that opens and closes, or opens the store on Saturdays and Sundays. So I don't get to go to church much. And I want to go to church. I usually Sunday nights was my thing, but Sunday night church. But this was going to allow me the opportunity to work at the church and then get to go to church. So I hated saying goodbye to Dickinson at the Treadaway, but I did and accepted that job at the church.
And so that's 1983-ish right there that begins, correct?
Yep, exactly.
And so that's kind of the doorway into what ministry was for you at the janitor position, being in the church and being involved and sitting under, again, who we call Papa or Nick Harris, sitting under his teaching a whole lot more, being around the church and seeing seeing Papa meet needs for people, the pastor going and doing things in the community, making an impact. And that's very impactful to you, it seems like.
I'm not only at church on Sundays now, I'm there during the week, and I'm getting to have conversation with him, hang out, and he says, hey, you want to go with me to go visit this person, or you want to go to me to the store, or you want to come over to our house? And of course, I'm post youth group at this point. I've just graduated out of high school, but the college kids are still hanging in the youth group at the time that happened. So
and so as we just kind of fast forward a little bit into this, let's go. If you could summarize 1983 to 1990, what are some of the positions then at the church that you start, I guess, fulfilling the positions that you do?
So I start off as janitor, and then there's a need for a youth director, and so there's another man on staff, or who comes to the church, Jeff Todd, who accepts the role of children's director, and he's playing the piano.
He fully bypassed janitor duties.
That's right. He was straight to
just got right to
the
that
children's director and piano player for the worship leader at the time.
The phenomenal piano player too.
So he's doing children, and I'm doing youth, and we become good friends. And so I'm doing youth and janitor during this time, which now I'm on staff, so it's even more time with the pastor and the staff. And of course, I'm getting to know him and his family also.
And so just before we get into all this, I want to hear, again, so you say there was a lot of family tension and all this stuff going up into postgraduate.
For me and my mom and dad.
For you, and you and your parents. And then, again, you have Nick Harris comes in and starts explaining all of these family-oriented preaching and all this stuff. So spiritually, how are you growing or changing?
So this is where faith starts to, I'm hearing it, how it applies to relationships. And that's important. And I don't know how to resolve all this stuff with my mom and dad at this point. I only know it's not the best. It's not great. I don't know how to resolve it. Start attending a conference where they talk about these things. This is the Bill Gothard conference. We've talked about in other podcasts.
Shout out to that other podcast.
So one of the things he did talk about was resolving conflict with your parents and recognizing that God uses them in your life in very specific ways to help direct your path. So even to the point where he says it would be helpful if you have conflict with your parents to seek to resolve that. And you just got to know that wasn't ever a conversation that we had with my parents. There was no talk about relationships and resolving and I'm sorry. And
kind of like things happen. Let's put them under the rug now and we don't have to address that again.
And we're going to be angry about it for a while and then move on. So when he suggests sit down with your parents and ask forgiveness for being rebellious and saying, I want to be I want to hear your input into my life. That's just massive. I remember
You look for the exit door at the conference. At that point.
no, but there was a sense which I committed to God. I said, okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I remember, going home, and the only times there was ever kind of those moments was where we sit down to dinner, and the TV was always on. But I thought, I'm going to do this. God, help me to do this. I remember finally getting the courage. God gave me the courage to have that conversation at the table with my parents. And we did. And it took every bit of courage within me, but asking forgiveness for being angry and upset and bitter at them for us moving to Red Oak. And
Wow.
and saying, I know God has a purpose in that, and I want to be submissive to that. I didn't know what all it was at that time.
Yeah.
It was starting to become more clear. Obviously, coming to Christ was part of that, but that happened during that time.
That's awesome.
So
It's good.
now it's also during that time that I'm again hanging out with Nick Harris's family, and I'm noticing he has a young daughter. That I'm interested in. Of course, she's very young at the time.
Yeah.
And
Facts.
so can't be too interested.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm the youth director, which is more awkward.
So, anyways,
Anyway.
as time continues on, we'll say 1989, you and, spoiler alert, Nick Harris's daughter, mom, Heather Harris at the time, you all begin dating whenever she's 16. So this would be 1988, 1988, 1989.
Yep. I stopped doing youth ministry at that point.
Yes.
And just because I'm kind of losing interest in it and I want something else. I don't know what it is. So I moved into position of director of communications was really kind of the title they had for me. I'm really sitting at the front desk at the time of the church office. So I'm receiving people that come in. I'm answering the phone back in the days before cell phones, of course, before any of that. I'm answering the phone. I'm putting together all their printed material,
This
the
is
bulletins.
secretary on steroids.
It is. And so any kind of printed material, newsletters, bulletins, posters, handouts, any kind of communication, scheduling, I'm doing all of that. That's my role at the time. So that's what I was doing prior to me and Mom getting married.
Nice. Okay. So again, those are some of those positions. And so we'll move all the way up into 1990. You and Mom do get married.
Yeah.
And we will, again, not just go year by year, but kind of over the span of the 90s, y'all get married. We enter the scene eventually between all the years of the 90 from 91 to 99, kids being born, five of them.
Yep.
And so I'm sure during that time, there's these questions of like, all right, are we staying here at ORBC?
Yep.
What does this look like for us? We want to have kids.
Yep.
What are some of those, like what is changing in you during this time?
Yeah, great question. So I tend to be a homebody. Let's get in the spot and just stay here for a while. So I wasn't looking to move necessarily. I was very comfortable being in any other role except for the lead role.
Yeah.
So had since God called me into ministry during those
83
those 80s,
times.
early
Early
80s. I had that conversation with Nick Harris during that time. He helped me through understanding, yes, God has called you into ministry. I believe that. But the thing was, he would say, well, do you want to preach on this Sunday? And I'm like, no,
thanks.
I don't. I don't. I really
Can
don't.
I just go clean the stage again on this
Yeah,
Sunday?
I'll do anything else.
Yeah.
I'm called into ministry, but don't ask me to preach.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of a weird thing.
All of the behind the scenes ministry was like, this is me. I'm the creative.
I'll do it.
I'll put the oil on the machine all day
Yep.
long.
I'll organize. I ran sound, developed their tech ministry, video. I'll do all of that stuff behind the scenes, but not really much into the preaching. I led to youth ministry for a while. It's during the 90s that he and the church began Ovilla Christian School in 92.
Yes.
Wow.
And the first year is just a K-5 class. The second year, they add more grades. And he comes to me and says, what would you think about being the principal next year? I had never thought about that.
Yeah.
I do a lot of praying, a lot of reading, a lot of researching, and
that's a passion for you eventually.
it becomes a deal. We start the next
Christian
year.
education.
Yeah. So as the years unfold, we start writing a character curriculum that will become the basis of what Ovilla Christian School is. And then we write kind of the policies and the directions and the philosophy that it's going to be. And that's happening all in the 90s. We're adding grades rapidly during that time. The church is growing. At the time, the church is experiencing some growth because it supports the Bill Gothard ministry, and people come and grow. The church grows exponentially. It's you go from 300 people to 500 plus. Multiple
and again,
services. This
is over the course of, 93, 94, that's happening. And that, in a span of 10 years now, you've seen the church going from like 100 to like 500 now.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
In a span of 10 years.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, that's quite the growth.
It's a lot. And the staff has grown.
Yeah.
And
again, you're not just like, and I attend every week, but it's like I am doing
I'm elbow grease in this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm putting every bit of myself into making this thing run.
Yeah, it's a lot of behind the scenes, after hours work.
Yeah.
I'm picking up the school administration, and then for a while I'm doing what back then was the education director, which is like the Sunday school and any kind of extra classes that you did.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
leading all of that as well. Now the shift is becoming more about education / discipleship, growing people up. And I'm teaching classes at the time. So I'm gaining some confidence along the way.
So all that stuff, it just seems like an absolutely overwhelming amount of like things that you're a part of. And so spiritually, mentally, like where are you at during all those times? Again, you go from the start of 1990 being a single guy who's even living in his house and is just doing things behind the scenes at the church to now, like by the end of the 90s, I've got 5 kids and I am like the number 2 guy of a church that's here at like 500 people.
So is that 12 years from janitor to into the 90s having that?
83 up to
83.
Okay.
Turns out somewhere there, yes.
Yeah.
But up to 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. And so like spiritually and mentally, like what's going on in your head and throughout the 90s?
Yeah,
there?
great question. So I pick up this view of faith because of this conference I went to, and partly because of my own personality as well, and just wrong belief, that my role as a believer is to try to be as perfect as I can, and that is what will gain me more approval with God.
That's how you'll receive God's love.
Yeah. So, sounds religious to some degree and sounds half right, and I chased it. And
and you did some great things in that.
I was going to say there's some things along the way you think I'm doing it, but you can't do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's dark days. There's days you don't do that. There's days you're struggling. There's days you fail, and those are the days I didn't know how to deal with. And so it's a very demanding decade, with children and work and then faith, and I'm cratering inside. It's during this time I'm starting to struggle with panic attacks, and I'm starting to struggle with.
How early on in the 90s do you feel like that happened? I mean, I'll just say, because I have kids, like that brings along stress in itself.
Yeah, so let's see, probably 95, 96.
Shout
right
out,
in there.
I was born in 95. I asked the question, it starts.
Not your fault.
I know.
It's just it's
I
more
better
what
have
I'm,
my third kid.
It's more
I
what
feel
I'm
it.
believing
Yeah.
at the time about my identity and worth. And so, I can remember some very specific locations I was sitting and this overwhelming panic takes over. And so it's panic mixed with some depression, mixed with a lot of confusion. I don't understand what's going on. I just know that there's this inward spiral going on, and it's down and it's dark.
Yeah. And so in all of that, though, in all the things that you're believing in the mental state that you're in, I'm sure in there, you still have a passion for like growing the church, seeing people become believers. And so there's this mix of passion and I'm sure like an exhaustion at the same time. Like how do those things go hand in hand, or do they, or is it like oil and water? And
yeah, add to that just the fact that there's pressures in a growing church, lots of people, the governmental structure we had at the time in the church, all of that led to some even darker moments, where there's conflict and tension. I didn't know how to deal with it, and so it began to be focused on me, and that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of reached almost, kind of a breaking point. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Is this for me?
About all this.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Again, even in all that, though, you have in 1997, you're ordained, like officially, like you are now Pastor Brian. Not just licensed into ministry like you were.
Well, Minister Brian.
Minister.
I didn't
Minister
have the
Brian.
title of pastor, but
yes.
I was on staff.
But the church recognizing you as you are an ordained minister of the gospel. Like, you have the right to go to another church and be recognized as an ordained minister.
Yep.
And so in all of that, moving forward a little bit, you go to another conference in 2003, which is the Creative Church Conference. That is an awesome conference.
Otherwise known as C3.
C3, yep. And
because creative people have to say it in a creative way. That's what it is.
With the logo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's in Grapevine with Pastor Ed Young. You go to C3. What is that like for you in 2003 whenever you attend that?
Yeah, so, you go there, and their whole thing was doing church creatively to try to reach people.
That is a church that is very much opposite of what Ovilla is.
Yeah, at the time, they are anything but traditional, and so they're doing some very out there things. It seemed at the time, who in the world would have ever thought of doing church like this?
Yeah.
A lot of it had a lot of negative view, but I'm intrigued by it. It's all incredibly moving.
It's a large church. It's how many people are?
It's giant at the time. They're 5,000 plus at the time. Then we've been to some other large churches, Prestonwood, and some of that stuff. But Ed's doing some things very, very differently,
and very much to pastors to be like, hey, y'all should learn this stuff to y'all should make the modern
here's a way
church
to
like this.
reach people that have been outside the church, outside the traditional church. And that's all very intriguing to me and moving. So much so that I remember very specifically sitting there in one of those sessions, and it was so obvious in that moment that God was speaking to me and telling me, I have called you not just in ministry, but to pastor. You are going to pastor.
Like, this is your life.
Mm-hmm. And that was it was so overwhelming. I just moved to tears and brokenness during that time, in hopes and joy. This is awesome. This is great, but still not knowing how in the world that's going to play out.
Yeah,
because I'm in an established church.
Yeah.
In an established position.
With an established that
you help grow.
Pastor.
Yeah. That I don't know how this is going to happen.
Yeah.
I said that you help grow. Like, it's not one thing where you're like, man, I've been attending this established church. I think I might go somewhere. You're like, no, I literally blood, sweat, and tears going into this.
I mean, at that point, you are 20 years at Ovilla Road.
Yeah.
You're 20 years invested into that place. That I'm sure the questions then for you and your family at this point is, okay, I've been called to be a senior pastor. Does this mean I'm leaving the church?
Yeah.
Does this mean I tell the pastor, which is also your father-in-law, hey, pal,
see you.
Hit the road. I'd like to take your spot. No, I don't think that's the case,
No.
But I feel like at that time, I would think that passion that you had early on is probably just ignited like nobody's business, basically, to where it's like, all right, like you're saying, this is it. This is where I'm going. What do you do with all of that passion and unction to be like, this is where I'm doing. This is what I'm doing.
Another thing is happening behind the scenes. All of the panic attacks, guilt, perfectionism, legalism that I had been a part of, God speaks, and I pick up a book called Breaking the Bondage of Legalism. I'm thinking this would be a great subject for all those Bill Gothard people.
Those people really struggle with this.
They need this. And I read it, and I recognized this is for me. And all of a sudden, in that time, I found I don't have favor because I'm perfect or because of my performance. I have favor because of what Jesus has done for me.
Yeah.
And it frees me all of a sudden. It's like I finally was able to take a deep breath and exhale spiritually.
Yeah.
Where, okay, I don't have to wear this burden anymore. I don't have to keep up a show anymore. I have been set free. I am the apple of his eye. I am chosen. I am loved. I am fully forgiven. I am given his righteousness. I can lay off of trying to be perfect to get somewhere.
Yeah.
This is revolutionary for me because of where I'd been.
Yeah. And
so,
people are probably thinking, 20 years into ministry and you're just now figuring this. Yes. But it's very real in the sense that like, okay, you understood like the elementary, this is what being a Christian is.
Yep.
And then other teachings swaying maybe like the original direction you're headed in or whatever it was, nonetheless, like the passion that you had early on seemed to have got bogged down to where now it's like, here is truth straight from the Bible.
Yeah.
Removing all of this, and now here's your passion that you can now excel in and preach to other people.
Yeah. So
well, I also just think it's interesting on just every person's own pathway of like becoming a Christian. The kind of goal is like, I want to obtain knowledge now. Like I want to learn what this new lifestyle is and how much self-inflicted fog you bring into your life because of that, though.
True.
Of just the quickly reaching for like, oh, I just need to grab onto this and grab onto this, and like this can become this.
Yeah.
And then it takes that kind of like, again, 20 years of being like, oh, I kind of like, I fogged my glasses and like I kind of turned a blind eye to a lot of this, and like having those revelations again are so important.
Yeah. So all that's coming together, here comes this call to pastor. At the same time, I'm being set free from all of this bondage I've walked in. So the fire is doubled in that moment. Like, ooh, I got something to say. I got something I need to do. Not only am I called to this, all of a sudden now I've got this passion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to help set people free. I don't want anyone else to walk where I've walked. I don't want people to walk in burden and guilt and condemnation and shame. I want to help people be set free.
Yeah.
So this is now kind of the passion.
Yeah. And so from all that, I'm sure you're having discussions with the pastor, Nick Harris, your father-in-law, all this stuff. And they come up with the idea, hey, you should do a Saturday night service here on our campus at our church.
Yeah.
And you can have a platform in which to speak to people.
Right. And we do. 2004, the church kicks off a new phase of ministry, and they're going to have 3 services. On Sunday morning, they're going to have a classic service at 8 o'clock. I think it was at 10:30, we were going to do a celebration service. So it was an early service, Sunday school, and then a second service. And then I was going to lead a Saturday night service called Encounter, which was going to be a contemporary service, completely different format.
Hit all the realms of
all buzzwords,
all 3 of
Ellis
them.
County.
That's right. So, we're like, okay, we're going to do a band on stage. We're going to turn the lights down. We're going to set up we're going to set up, instead of rows of chairs, we're going to do groupings of like 6 chairs with a small table and a candle on it. And we're going to serve coffee and desserts.
It was very much like a speakeasy lounge setup.
Yeah, right. And for people outside, they might have thought it was kind of like a club scene, almost looking like.
Like you feel like whenever like someone would have a good point, like everyone should snap.
And it was intentional. It's like, let's create an environment that's a little different, because we were out to reach those who had been burned in or bored by church.
Yeah.
So
those were two of the biggest launching points for the church Encounter.
Yeah.
Burned in Church was like the first or one of the like primary series that y'all did.
Yeah.
And Breaking the Bondage of Legalism being another huge
and I mean, one of Vertical's staples still today is using like real life examples on stage. Do you want to say what those like real life examples were of either like depictions of real life of a difference, or you explain it?
So like in the worship center there at Ovilla Road Baptist Church, there was a large door, rolled up door, so we could bring in stuff and use them for props and stuff. And so I did a small series called "It's Not Your Daddy's Church," and so we knew a guy in town that had a 1964 Mustang, and we knew a guy that had a 2004 Mustang, and they were both red.
That's so crazy.
So we brought them in and parked them there at the front and did this series, talking about It's Not Your Daddy's Church, talking about faith in each generation and the importance of every generation owning their faith, and the church reflecting that and meeting the
both
needs
Mustangs
of people.
have like tons to bring to the table, and they're very cool. But
exactly.
So that was kind of stuff we were doing to try to have an environment that was different, to try to reach those people who might not come to a Sunday morning, more traditional like church. So,
and Encounter started out with about how many people on the Saturday night?
Yeah, so we're running, 40, 50 people
Yeah.
It averaged up and down, depending upon seasons and times. But it's Saturday night. A lot of excitement initially.
Yeah.
It wanes a little over time.
Yeah. But y'all grow to such an extent that y'all move to the Waxahachie Civic Center.
Yeah. So, we're 1 year in and it's going well. And there starts to be some talk about, now what's the future going to look like? And what am I going to do? And what am I going to be called to do? And there's talks about what the future of Ovilla Road is like. And, is the pastor going to stay? And am I going to stay? Is that a future possibility there for me to be there? Or what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And through conversations with him and the elders, the conclusion is, you've been called to ministry somewhere else.
Yeah.
No, they provide it's a great opportunity for Encounter, this Saturday night ministry, to pick up and move to Waxahachie to meet at the Civic Center. And the church is supportive of that. We don't get booted out, the church. It's not a split. It's a we're sending you.
It was a celebration. It's a happy.
Yeah. And so the church supports it. The Ellis County Baptist Association supports it. The Baptist General Convention of Texas supports it.
Can you get even more support than that?
I know, and some private donors support it.
That's awesome.
So financially, we're set. We buy sound equipment and lighting equipment, and we're ready. And we start in 2005.
And then we set that stuff up every single Sunday for forever.
We backed a trailer up. We bought a trailer and drove it there every Sunday and unpacked it, set it up, and then packed it up and parked it. So
that's 22 years at ORBC that you're there.
Yeah.
And then you basically give a final handshake.
Yep.
Here we go. Next chapter of my life.
Exactly.
I'm sure to some degree there is wow, this dream has been fulfilled. And this is the start of this brand new chapter.
Here we go.
Daunting, exciting. The whole family's going.
Yep.
And
I'm the only paid staff. There's a lot of people who are passionate, and we've got a lot of people bought in who are helping. But I'm it,
Yeah.
So those first couple of Sundays, Heather is running the children's ministry.
Wow.
And I'm doing,
which is not mom's thing.
That's not her thing.
She's not passionate.
She's gracious and involved, and y'all are all very young at the time, so you're
Too
not
young to
assuming
actually
any
help.
roles.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe Brianna and Holly might have helped pass out some bulletins or help me set up chairs and some of that stuff back in the day.
Yeah. But again, mom's passion is not like, hey, let's organize a bunch of kids and do kids ministry all together. That's not
she
her,
just organizes a bunch of grandkids these days.
Exactly.
True. Yeah.
No, but that's not her thing, admittedly. So those early years are hard, but we're working it and believe this is what God's called us to, and God brings people along, and it begins to grow.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we could go explain every single year from 2004 on.
Yeah.
But we will
It's just sorry, also to confirm, that's not Saturday nights once we're at
No,
Civic
we're back
Center.
on Sunday morning. Good point. Yeah. We moved to Sunday mornings, and the church begins to grow.
Yeah.
At the Waxahachie Civic Center.
Yeah. And so fast forwarding through the life of Encounter, down towards the end, the last year and a half, we'll say 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Could you explain what the state of the church was?
Yeah.
Mindset for you, the family, direction, all that stuff.
Yeah. So 2011, 12, right in there, things start not going well for Encounter. There's some inner turmoil, broken relationships, and people that were in key positions are no longer in those positions. And there's kind of this ripple effect outward from there. So it's shrinking in size. So we're having to, shrink the rooms that we're in. We can't afford the large spaces, don't need the large spaces anymore.
Yeah.
And it continues to, now giving is dwindling. We don't have the support from outside that we once did. And so we reach this point where like, we can't even stay at the Civic Center anymore to afford the cost of this. And so we pray, and someone had a relationship with a church in Midlothian, and they asked, could we meet there on a Saturday night? There was one of the Sundays that the Civic Center had an event on Sunday morning, so they allowed us to go meet on Saturday night there, and that goes pretty well. You know, people show up, people that we hadn't seen in a long time, they show up there for this Saturday night thing and think, maybe this is what we should do, because the rent was going to be a lot less, and there was this excitement. And so we do. We moved back to Saturday night in another location in Midlothian.
Yeah.
And The other thing that's happening all during this time is you all are, well, not all of you, but our kids are becoming teenagers at this point. So mom and I are operating the children's ministry, youth ministry.
Yeah.
And I'm the youth director, and it's happening pretty much out of our home. We don't own a facility.
You're the youth director and janitor at your own house. Yeah, like that's right.
And pastor.
And pastor.
Good point.
Run it back.
So, but it's a great time. I mean, y'all are involved in ministry. We're right there. Yeah. It's youth. It's going well. People in the church are helping out.
I mean, your 3 oldest meet their spouse during this time.
It's true. It's foundational. It's powerful.
Everyone besides Druid. Shout out.
Shout out, Chloe.
Yeah. So much. It's happening so much that really the youth is what is sustaining the church, really. Yeah. That's
not financially, though.
Not financially. They are the bulk of the attendance.
And then eventually those people graduate.
Yeah, they graduate.
And then they have a life that they're like, all right, I'm moving on.
Yeah, they move on. And then all that's happening while the church we're meeting in says, hey, you know what? We're closing up shop. Our church is folding, so you're going to have to go find another facility.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a challenge. Like, okay, we can do this. So God, where to next? So we find another church in Waxahachie that says, hey, you can come use our building on Saturday nights. Awesome. So church kind of had like sound needs that we did as far as had a band and all that. So we move in there. We're not there very long. They say, hey, we're selling this building and we're moving. You're going to have to find, I'm like, oh my word. They said, you could go with us. We're buying this other building. You can move in there with us. So we follow them. And the church is dwindling. We're down to 60 at this point. It's getting smaller.
I think it's harder to tell people where we are at because like, are y'all at the Civic Center? No. Are y'all at that church on the highway? No, we're not. Are y'all at this place? No, we're not there. We're at this new place.
Yeah, we're at this new place that they won't let us put a sign out front.
Yeah.
The city won't let us put a sign out front. So it became very difficult. It just felt like this whole thing is closing in. The doors are just closing. It's darker and darker. Yeah. We're meeting at a point, again, we're having to say, well, do you know where the post office is in Waxahachie? Maybe. Do you know where Bethlehem Revisited is? Maybe. Well, it's across the street from there. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awkward, and so it's hard. It's Saturday night, and the thing we learned about culture out here, people don't like to go to church on Saturday night.
Correct.
They want to go to church on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Because it's like, you want to go bowling? You want to go to church? It's like, let's go bowling.
So,
because they're like, well, I'll go to church on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Easy as that.
And so,
just to ask another question on that, though, because we talked about kind of your like mental, spiritual status in 95. Just like briefly, what are the like peaks and valleys through Encounter's life by like you move to the Civic Center and you're Sunday and you kind of have this thing by like, okay, we are now like, we're not just the church that meets inside Ovilla Road anymore. Like we're
not your daddy's
like,
church.
Yeah, like you officially moved out now. And it's that first feeling of like probably excitement and fear. And what is that path like?
Yeah, it's full of ups and downs. It's this feeling of excitement, like, here we go, let's do this. I've moved out on my own. And then I've kind of made a mess of my life, kind of feeling like, okay, I should have seen this trouble brewing and I should have handled it differently. And I didn't. And it's just like, okay, this is not going well. This is not going well. This part is going well. My kids in the youth group, they're growing. There's some adult relationships. There's some real changes happening in people's lives, and that's good. But overall, the thing is just, it's starting to dwindle. It's tough, and you feel like, I just feel like there's something else. What's happening here, God? And it's confusing time. It's dark.
Because again, though, because what's tough is it's not like it's dark the whole time. We would have like some odd dark times and some like really incredible times of like real life change. So many baptisms during all that time. So much incredible worship times during all of that.
Some really open spiritual times, meeting in our home and having what we call Friday night coffee conversations. People coming over and talking through.
And we have like 30 people in your house or on the living room.
Yeah, and we're talking through deep issues.
Brewing like 5 pots of coffee.
That's right. Those are good times, great times. But when you kind of back out and you look at the thing, you think, okay, if you look at it numerically, think, okay, this is not where I thought this was going. No one starts out and thinks, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to go from 200 down to 150, down to 100, down to 60, down to 50.
Yeah. So towards the end of the life of Encounter, you end up I just kind of explain what the end of Encounter was and into, spoiler alert, the beginning of Vertical.
Yeah. So it's reaching this place to where we really can't even sustain the ministry by the people that are coming on Saturday nights.
We even tried for a while as an incentive program to put like the weekly giving amount needed and then like the ones received. And it ends up just being like a punch to the gut.
Yeah, it's just more
like when you have to print it off and to look at it and you're just like, this is tough.
So, then I get to this point of like, okay, we can't even sustain this anymore in the way it looks. So I'm thinking, okay, do I need to go get just another job and kind of call this thing
bivocational?
Say, okay, this is not what God's called me to, apparently. Yeah. And it's a time that's hard for me. I'm questioning myself and wondering, okay, God, where are you? And I thought we were going down this path. I thought you called me and all of that stuff. There's some, again, you add to that some people leave along the way, and that's hurtful, and you don't know how to resolve some of that stuff. And
it's the pastor's journey that no one really is able to fully relate to. That's such it's the tough part of being a pastor.
Yeah. So I remember coming home, and Heather and I talked, and I said, this was coming down. We're going to make a decision here because we can't continue like it is. Yeah. I'm either going to have to go get another job, and we have to change all that we're doing.
Or is it like let's pick up and move to some other church?
Or is this God closing the door and about to open up something else?
Yeah.
So I remember telling Heather.
And this wasn't just like a casual sit down, like, I was kind of thinking, this is the most like.
This is it. So I called Heather, mom, and said, hey, get the kids together. I'll come home this afternoon and we'll just have a serious family conversation. So we do. And I lay it all out for all of y'all at the time, which, I'm
14. Yeah. Anna's 23.
Thank you.
That's the span.
And everyone else is in between.
Andrew was like, that's all.
And I'm explaining all of this, and I'm just broken at the time. I don't know the answer. I'm full of questions and uncertainty. And I remember standing.
It's worth it. Bring it to the table
in our living room that day, saying, I don't know what to do. I need y'all to pray. And y'all were all good to remind me God called us into ministry, and God will sustain us, and He will provide. And I felt like the man who had to be lowered down through the roof to see Jesus because he didn't have the faith, but his friends did. That's what I felt like that day.
It was that day.
Yeah. So we all prayed. Y'all probably with more faith than me at that time for God to provide an answer. And so I left with a little bit of more faith, like, okay, we need to do something different. This is not working. So let's find a way to start an Encounter on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
What we thought was good.
Yeah.
All right. Where are we going to do that? I don't have a building. I got no clue. Well, let's do it in our home. Yeah. We'll just start. And if we get 3 people that want to come to our home on a Sunday morning, we will.
Our family had the mindset of like, if it just takes our family having church here together on Sunday morning to make this feel like we're doing something on Sunday morning, we're doing that.
We'll keep doing Saturday night church, but we're also going to do Sunday morning church.
Yeah.
And we did. And some people joined us that hadn't been joining us on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
And still there's no clear answer. 2 weeks of that go by, and I get an email from a guy I'd never met before. And he's the pastor of First Baptist Ovilla. And he says, hey, I heard about your church Encounter. Would you like to get together and talk? Sure. So we set it up. We're going to meet in Waxahachie. And very uncharacteristic of me, I sleep past my alarm that day. That doesn't ever happen.
Dude normally wakes up at like 6 a.m. every
exactly.
day.
So I wake up late. I get down there, meet this man for the first time. He explains where the church is, First Baptist Ovilla, what they had walked through. They had been through some staff changes. The church was struggling. That had a lot of internal strife. They were really dwindling. A church that had at one time run 400 people.
Yeah.
They were down to, some 30, 40 people. said, man, I can relate. I know what you're talking about. But he says, I actually looked online and I've been listening to some of your messages. And what? He said, I saw a sign that you actually had out on the highway there in Midlothian for just a little while, which we had for a very short period of time.
Short as in like a handful of weeks.
Yeah, we put that sign out there and the city said, hey, you can't have that sign out there. And that was it.
And this sign was literally like, it was a giant poster that we got that was like probably 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was literally like on 2x4s that we like stabbed into the ground. Like that was it. This is like, we did not buy a billboard. This is the most DIY thing possible.
Yep.
But he saw it. God had him see it. And he went online, listened to some of the messages. And he said to me, what would you think about our two churches merging? And you could be the lead pastor. And I thought, this is crazy.
Like, what in the world?
How in the world?
And this is, again, like weeks after we had met in the living room.
2 weeks after that. And so I remember leaving there, calling Heather and telling her, and just both of us in tears and shocked.
Our entire family was floored by it.
Yeah.
Like every single thing was the most like this was the most God evidence thing we could have ever thought of.
Yeah. So he and I continued to meet, and I'm going into this like, what in the world is going on?
And as the few weeks continue forward with the Encounter Sunday mornings, we ended up being too big for the living room. Move over to the Heritage House here in Midlothian. Meet there for like 3 weeks at about 80 to 100 people.
Yeah, it's filling up.
And it was like,
that's crazy.
What in the world is going on?
Yeah.
And
so he and I keep meeting, and we plan for our two churches to merge and form a new name, new vision, keep the same doctrinal truths. Decided on the name Vertical Church, and with that little tagline phrase, lift him up and live him out, that this would be our goal, is to do that very thing, that we would lift up the gospel and lift up Jesus, but the focus would be on how do we live him out, and all that, all my past and all that has come forward to where this moment is all going to come to pass in this ministry for him too.
Yes.
And so we start in April that year,
2015,
6 weeks from the day we start meeting till that, and a church is formed, and both churches meet together. We start having some fellowships and plan for a launch date. And these 40 people each come together, and we begin in 2015.
We had like 200 something on our first day.
Yes. A lot of prayer, a lot of footwork, a lot of excitement. Yeah. And that's what happens. Yeah. It's not 80 anymore. It's 120, 150, almost 200.
I think it was almost 200 on Easter.
Opening day. Yeah. It's a facility. Finally, we have a building. We can meet. We can have a youth ministry. We can have a children's ministry. We can have classes. We can have an office. Yeah. It was a completely
we never had that
brand
for
new
any of
day.
Encounter's life.
No, I had an office I met in, but it was just me.
Yeah.
So
again, we could go year by year through the life of Vertical, but let's go to Vertical now and talk about what is it for you each day when you wake up that you're like, wow, this is Vertical now, and this is what I love.
Yeah. So again, you fast forward. So here we are, 8.5 years later. We're running on any given Sunday 450 total in children on campus, children and worship. So 2 worship services. Yeah. And God is blessing, and we're seeing things happen that were kind of beyond what you might have expected.
Yeah, it's way beyond what we expected.
8 years. There's a staff of people.
Yeah.
And some of them are my family members. Yeah. And all gifted and called, and everyone on the staff is passionate toward this end, and great relationships. Yeah. And then the church is growing. It's healthy. There's a healthy organizational structure, great leaders, and God is blessing. Yeah. And it happens every Sunday. So, you've got this powerful men's ministry, women's ministry, worship ministry, youth ministry, children. Every bit of it is they're hitting on all cylinders.
And like so many important sermon series that have completely reshaped the church and has like reunited everyone in faith.
Yeah. And to move forward together. And so, that's powerful series along the way. We are series driven. We move by the themes. We're obviously teaching from Scripture. We're not just topic based. We are biblically based. Take our messages from Scripture, but we're applying them to life. We're lifting him up and we're living him out. And when you start helping people know how to live out truth and where they fit in God's story, that it changes them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's Vertical now.
I'm not sure I answered all your questions, but
we'll get there with this next one here. Just another crazy thing happening now is you have Papa, or Nick Harris, who was once your mentor for, again, 22 years you're under him. Yeah. And then you move out, in a sense, and begin your own church. And now he is serving here at Vertical, as in making the breakfast every week at the men's breakfast, serving in your ministry now.
Yeah. That most of those men don't even fully understand the full
story of that.
Yeah. And now also in the church, you have people being called into ministry. And that's crazy.
It is.
To where you, 1983, 1981, here in Ovilla, become a believer. 1983, joined the ministry, and here we are 40 years later of established influence in this North Ellis County area. And you have people being called into ministry here at this church. Like what does that even mean to you? Like, is that just incomprehensible?
It's mind blowing, because there's things you have hopes and dreams for. I try to just say, okay, God, I don't want to get my thoughts out there, because I do. They might not be your thoughts, so I try to lay some of that aside. But
and God's made it obvious that His thoughts and plans are significantly way bigger than
different
ours.
than mine. So I'm like, ain't doing that. But to all of a sudden have people come along and say, hey, I think God's called me into ministry. I believe God's called me into ministry. Well, I believe God's calling me into ministry. All of a sudden, you're seeing this, reproduction of life in people that are coming to Christ. But now you're seeing leaders raised up who want to carry on as well, who want to be on staff and be pastors and have their own churches someday. That's overwhelming to think about.
Absolutely.
I think what's crazy too is just even like as we went down that entire just the years of your ministry, of whenever someone comes to you or True and it's like, hey, I'm kind of interested in ministry, of this kind of just like quick flash of like, here's every single thing what ministry is. And at the same time, like being so excited, but being like, you're going to go through so much.
Buckle up.
Buckle up, man. This is a life.
Yeah. For me, the joy is in, again, seeing people see faith as a vibrant, life-giving part of their life. It's like, this is not dull, empty religion. This is my life. And Jesus has truly come to set me free. And He is changing me. So I love, like the series we're in right now, Set Free, and hearing people tell stories of, here's the most fresh thing God's doing in my life. People that have been believers for decades say, here's the new thing God's doing in my life. That, and people's passion to follow God and calling into ministry, all that stuff is like, God, you're far more gracious than I could have ever imagined and dreamed. So I'm humbled and grateful to be a part of it, and to think I get to have my sons involved in ministry as well.
It's awesome.
Beyond what I could have ever imagined. And daughters all here as well. Serving my wife here, and so many friends all here together at this time. Only for such a time as this could God have a purpose bigger than what we can comprehend. And I'm overwhelmed by all of it.
So with all that, you have Vertical now, which is just a crazy thing. Vertical future. I mean, what is it for you that you're like, this is where I'm headed. This is it.
Well, obviously, I'm not finished yet. This is
True.
a birthday.
Let's go.
It's not retirement.
Let's go. That's for sure.
Come on.
That's for sure.
There's more. Who could have foreseen the internet and the options available through tech? So Hunter brings this to the table, a portal to the world, basically, by providing videos and podcasts and audio recordings that are making their way out into the internet and the world.
813 subscribers at this point.
And
if
people
you haven't subscribed yet.
This is a great time. Please like and subscribe.
And people commenting and letting us know, hey, my cousin in this state listens, or my grandmother in this state listens. And like, wow, this is
I still
amazing.
think it's crazy how there's that one guy who was in Eureka Springs who found us by accident looking for another vertical church, found us and then listened, and he was like, I want to be baptized.
Yeah,
like
true.
even that was like, what?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, you know, I don't know exactly what the future looks like.
Yeah.
I know there's more.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to that. We're not through lifting him up and living him out. We're not
Yes,
through
exactly.
proclaiming truth. We're not through seeing how God's going to train up these people that are called into ministry. We're not through, I believe, here at Vertical, you know, facility wise, numerically wise, but depth wise in people's lives.
Absolutely.
People seeing their children come to Christ, their families fully serving the Lord, people understanding what their purpose is in Christ. We're not through yet. So I don't know what that means for the future. I can see glimpses of training up people into ministry.
Yep.
You know, I think about this day and time in which people are questioning. I'm looking for options in how to train my children these days when it comes to education. I see options there ahead for us. Is how do we help parents and children be trained and brought up in the ways of the Lord? How do we help people apply truth to their lives? How do we help them move forward and navigate that and be husbands and wives and mothers and fathers who are fully walking in God's ways? And us providing training opportunities for that, you know. I don't know what all that looks like yet. I see it. I see what the end goal is. But there's so much more that God has for us here locally for the people in this region, but beyond and even beyond that, the influence that God has birthed here. There's a purpose in it. It's bigger. It's bigger than us, and it has only just begun. So
It's good. It's good.
Stuff.
That's awesome.
So awesome.
I mean, that's all I've got for all the timeline of things, and I'm excited for what's ahead for the church, for us. Again, like you're saying, you know, even with Encounter and even at Ovilla Road, your passion was for the next generation to pick up faith, and the next generation to pick up faith, and the next generation to lift them up and lift them out. So again, that's what our passion is here at Vertical, and that's what we're going to continue to do, like you're saying. And so I'm so glad that you clicked on this. I hope that you are encouraged by the life and ministry of Brian Treadaway. And if you have been impacted by his ministry, if you would comment down below and say, hey, this is an awesome story that I've, have this relationship with Brian for this long. And so we'd love to hear those things. If you also want to, message us on Facebook or Instagram, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
And even if you haven't even stepped on campus and you've just been watching for this long, like we'd love to hear from you too.
Absolutely. But for now, that's what we got for today. Super excited. Super great.
Thank y'all.
Yep, absolutely. We'll keep lifting them up and living them out.